there has to be some plan in place, some flight plan, and then you have to trust what I call your instruments. In other words, if your instruments are saying that you're at the right altitude and going the right speed, then you keep going.
ADHD Rewired, episode number 33. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and slightly wandering attention. Whether you have ADHD and you want to learn more about it, or you are looking for ways to organize your time, your things, or the many details of life so you can get more done, this show is for you. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Check show notes for link. Hello, ADHD Rewired community. Eric Tivers here, and I'm about to bring you another episode of ADHD Rewired. What'd you expect? This American life? So, today's interview with Helena Boucher is, of course, as I always say, it's a great one. But we dive into a lot of really interesting things in terms of writing, self-awareness, and just the process of how to communicate effectively and efficiently. So I'm not going to set up too much of the episode because it is about an hour long, but I do want to say, since it is ADHD Awareness Month, I want to just hope that everybody is doing something to share with someone something about ADHD. And if you have not done so already, please don't forget to register for the CHAD conference. It is November 13th through the 15th, 2014. It is in the Chicago area. I will be speaking there. Is it Chicago? I don't know why I said that. So anyways, I'm going to keep moving on and enjoy the episode. I want to welcome my guest, Helena Boucher. And we did have some practice right before I hit record on how to pronounce your name. So, Helena, welcome to ADHD Rewired. I'm thrilled to have you.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So I got introduced to you by, I believe it's one of my prior guests, Carrie Gormley, who, is that how I introduced you? Or got introduced to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like, I think that's who I got introduced to you by. You know those little ADHD moments where you're like, wait, I think that's what happened? So that's how we got introduced. And one of the things that really excited about you, is that one of the things that you do is professionally is you help people as a communications consultant and writing coach, and that you really focus on helping people with ADHD with their writing goals. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I need to talk to you because I have a billion ideas in my head, and when I try to write them out, my brain's already 10 thoughts ahead, and so I really struggle with writing, and so that's why I podcast, because I can talk all day long, sometimes too much. So Helena, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you, in addition from what I just introduced you as. So kind of, who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm a person who's recently diagnosed with ADHD, and grateful for it. I'm also a musician.
What do you play?
I play bass, electric bass.
Cool. I am also a musician. That's awesome.
I saw you play piano?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Yes. So musician and a knitter of socks. I mean, I've many, many, many interests, which can kind of be the problem sometimes, as you know.
Mm-hmm. That's often not a bad problem. It's just if you, I guess, are focusing on too many things, it's hard to get anything done when you're trying to get everything done.
Right, exactly. I found that I pick about 4 things and then I rotate between them. Yeah. To kind of keep the novelty going.
Because novelty is certainly important with ADHD.
That is right. Change it up. Cycle it through, change it up. That's what I found.
So now you discovered ADHD through coaching, is that right?
Yes, I was going to an outfit called Mentor Coach, and Ben Dean, who is the leader of that organization, has a number of amazing mental, psychological, motivational professionals that he interviews. And one of the people that he interviewed was Ned Hallowell, who is a psychiatrist who has a place in New York and I think San Francisco now called the Hallowell Center.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically described ADHD to me in a way that I had never heard before. And he was describing a lot of the inattentive symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically said, oh my goodness, I have to go and read this book because he's describing me.
Yes, and that is such a common experience. And I think that most people who are listening to this show and have any inkling of awareness about ADHD know the name Hallowell, because he really is, we could really credit him for bringing adult ADHD into the public discourse with his book, and I always mix up which one's which, the Driven by Distraction, Driven from Distraction. One of them is you're distracted while driving, which we all know is not a good idea.
Right.
So you went to the Hallowell Center and you got diagnosed.
I got diagnosed.
Right?
Yeah. In fact, it was funny because I was sitting in the room with the therapist and they said, well, what brought you here? And I said, I was, I heard this interview with Hallowell and I read Driven to Distraction and I burst into tears in the first 30 pages, like 3 times. And, like the prescription pad was basically out because apparently that's a very common reaction to, by people who really connect with the way that he describes it. And what makes him different is that he looks at the patterns and the frequency of behaviors rather than the behaviors themselves. And so by telling my story of ADHD, they were able to ascertain that, yes, absolutely, that was my issue. And it was awesome.
And I want to just add there, when I saw him, I've seen him speak a number of times. And he's a great person to see speak. He's very passionate about what he says. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is when he was describing how he goes through that diagnostic process, and he said he rarely even uses rating scales anymore. Mm-hmm. Is that it's all about that conversation. It's about, tell me about your life. Tell me about the things that have happened to you. Tell me about what it was like growing up. So those stories, and I think that's way more informative for someone who's seen ADHD so many times than just this series of 18, items on the DSM checklist.
Right. Well, I think the thing is, too, that they're finding out that it manifests in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. I think there's like 7 areas of memory, and, that's one of the aspects that is affected by ADHD. And depending on who you are and what and how it's manifesting in you, it can show up in a whole bunch of different ways.
Okay, and Helena, real quick, I just lost your video feed, so I'm just gonna make a marker there. I don't know if you hit a button.
No, it just went off. That's weird. Do you want me to try to put it back on?
If you can, I just made a marker on the recording. Okay, there we go.
That's bizarre.
Oh.
What?
Bad connection?
That is weird. Why did it do that? Oh my goodness. It's just.
So this will be a test of mental flexibility to see
exactly.
how well we move on, or how long we try to solve this problem.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of that on the fly prioritization, shifting attention.
All right.
Okay, and we are back. Okay, so we just took a quick tech break while we tried to deal with something slightly distracting. So we're back. So when we first spoke, you were telling me a little bit about some of the symptoms that you were experiencing that kind of led you towards that path of getting that diagnosis. One of the things you talked about was the sensory overwhelm that you experienced, and that you were kind of, I think the phrase you used was you were maxing out your bandwidth.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, what happens with me is that I don't have any ability to filter. And so if there's a lot of different things going on, in certain frequencies, I just can't focus on anything anyone is saying at all.
Let me ask you a question. So when that happens, is it inconsistent or is it always the same for you?
You know what? It really depends on the frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, if there's a lot of noise, like, for instance, I had one boyfriend that had a rehearsal space, and there would be 3 rooms going, and it was like a tiny loft. And so it would be really loud in there, but it was all continuous, and I could study, I could, write, I could do anything there because there was this like wall of sound. And so it was actually sort of helpful. But if the television is on, and someone is trying to talk to me, I'm struggling to block out what's going on the TV or whatever that extra person is talking,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on, what the person in front of me is saying.
So you basically hear wah, 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 wah.
Wah, 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 wah. Exactly. Your lips are moving. I can't tell what you're saying at all.
You're hearing sound, but none of it makes sense.
Exactly.
And that's interesting and I think I mentioned this before on a prior episode. So in my office, I share a space with an occupational therapist, and the way the building here is set up is he has these pocket doors. And the pocket doors are more for a visual aesthetic and blocking, but you can actually slide your hand in between the frame of the pocket door and the actual door, which you can imagine has 0 sound privacy. So I basically asked him, could we get a quote on how much it would be to put a wall and a really heavy wood door? And he told me what it cost. It was like $800. I said, how soon could we do it? Because I was sitting in my office with clients. I would hear him with his clients in the hallway, and I couldn't hear what my clients were saying because I couldn't process both of those distractions. So it was that important to me, and it's huge. Yeah, that auditory processing is one of the areas that I don't think is talked about enough in ADHD.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I have a great story about the first day that I took the medication that was prescribed to me. And, part of my coping mechanism with ADHD is to be really quiet and to listen and take notes, because the notes focus me. Mm-hmm. Or I'll hyper focus on the conversation, because without the medication, I knew that I could not retrieve what I thought fast enough to keep pace with the conversation. It wasn't that I didn't have anything to say, but I just couldn't get to it fast enough. Like, people would have moved on by the time I got there. And so the first day that I took the medication, we were at dinner. We had invited a friend over, and my partner and she, another big business person, were having this conversation about strategy, which was something that I had been focusing on for a while. And I opened my mouth, and out came a completely coherent, multi-threaded, totally cohesive thought. And Jeff, my partner, looked at me, and he just was like, oh my goodness. And I was it felt so good to have access to that, to be able to go back into wherever that lives in my brain and reassemble it really quickly and then get it out in real time. I think that probably that change has done more to change the way that I think about myself than anything.
And Helena, you use a really, I think, important word, and that's access. The idea that, when we have ADHD, it's all in there, but it's kind of like maybe a lot of our filing systems. The paper's there somewhere. It's in some pile. It's being able to retrieve it quickly is one of the challenges. So I can relate to that. I think that a lot of our listeners can also relate to that being able to retrieve what it is that you're trying to say. Some of us think it so fast, but we can't organize it in a coherent manner to be able to say what we're trying to say. And that can be very frustrating.
It'd be frustrating. And I think the other thing that happens, at least with me, is that there are 9 thoughts that are basically, in a brawl in my brain.
Only 9?
I just picked a random number. pick more and, anyway. So, but see that.
I just distracted her.
You see the little, the slot machine things in my eyes rolling over. Okay. Anyway, so, but they're trying to get out. Nobody knows who really needs to be first. And so, anyway, that's another way that the conversation tends to move on. And then the other thing is that just what you did, that's another thing that isn't talked about enough, is that, especially out here, see, I'm from the Midwest, originally from Detroit. And in the Midwest, people wait until you're done talking and then they start talking. If you do that here on the East Coast, especially with some of my friends, you will never get to say anything. And so people will interrupt you, and that's just sort of the way that things work. But
or if you go to a Chad conference.
Oh, okay. Good, yeah. But
Speaking
what
of.
happens is that your train of thought is interrupted, and, good luck. I mean, maybe I can get it back, and maybe it's just gone.
Yeah, it's like you get derailed, and I think that's what's so frustrating. And yeah, it happens to me. It happens to a lot of us. And I think one of the things that strategies that I found to be helpful with that, because often when I'm in a session with my clients, one of the things that I will do is I'll almost always have a notepad next to me. And so if they're saying something, or if my client interjects something, I will quickly just write a word down that's going to kind of be like my mental bookmarker. But I can't keep it as a mental bookmarker. It needs to be a physical bookmarker. So it allows me to go back to it if it's needed. But what I actually find is that often the conversation just goes to a different place. And that instead of, trying to hold on so dearly to that thought that you were trying to finish, you can almost allow yourself to just tune into what the other person is saying and let go of what you were saying, because then your next thought will actually be more relevant most of the time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that,
Now, going back, you're talking about as a note taker, and you would hyper focus on listening, but not being able to retrieve kind of what you were saying. When we talked a few weeks ago, you said that you were like a scribe, that you can record conversations verbatim. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's basically the only way that I can survive in lecture format is to really hyper focus, and I've developed a kind of shorthand that enables me to take everything down.
And what does that look like?
It's basically skipping words and just getting the core words down.
Okay.
And then what that enables me to do is not worry so much about it, about getting it the first time. Because if I have the notes, I can basically replay the lecture in my head based on those prompts.
Have you ever used one of the Live Scribe smart pens?
I've heard about them, and I haven't.
They're great. So what it does is it uses a special kind of notebook that's digitally encoded, and on each piece of paper in this notebook is a record button, a play button, and a couple other things that you can tap on. So it's a special pen that has, I think it's like some kind of infrared reader. So you're writing with regular ink, but it's also recording what you're writing digitally. If you tap on that record button when you're taking notes, it's going to record everything that is being said while you're writing it. And what the cool thing is, if you tap on what you wrote, it will play back what was being said at the moment that you wrote that thing.
Wow.
Which is really, really cool. I had one for a while, and then it's kind of I had an issue with the charging, and then I got my iPad, and then I didn't have the need for it. But I'll tell you what, so I'm kind of known as like the app guy. My to-do list in the last about month and a half has been a paper notebook. There is something about paper and pen writing that you don't get from typing or it being digital. Even with a good stylus, it's still not the same. It's just something about it, how it encodes into your brain, that I think it gets more sticky in a sense into your brain when you're actually writing. And I think too, if you're in a lecture course, if you are so concerned about, spacing out or,
Hmm.
losing attention on something, just the mere fact that that this piece is being recorded, it kind of lowers the stress in your brain, and then kind of paradoxically, just you will learn it and retain the information being presented to you much more easily. So it's a great tool I've been thinking about for a while about getting the newest version of that. But I also think about a lot of things for a while before I take action on it.
Well, I'm with you when it comes to the paper notebook. Definitely. I love paper and pen. But this sounds really interesting. I love the idea that you can tap on the thing that you're curious about and you don't have to wade through a linear recording.
And you can upload it to your computer, and you can upload it to Evernote, and you could search your handwritten notes like you can Google.
Wow. I love Evernote. Do you use Evernote?
I do, and I used to not like it at all. I used to think it was too linear, but then I took the time and watched some videos on Evernote because I kept hearing all these productivityist kind of experts talking about how much I love Evernote, and so I thought, let me give this another chance and let me kind of dive into it. And I heard about some Evernote people that I should look at and watch some of their videos. And there were some just gems of information that I have found that has really helped me. One of my favorite uses of Evernote is the ability to forward emails into my Evernote account by using, there's three specific things I use in the subject line: the exclamation point, the hashtag, and the @ symbol. When you use those, and you have to actually do it in the right order, and the way to remember the order, look at your keyboard. It's 1, 2, 3. So the exclamation point has to be first, the @ symbol second, and then the hashtag third.
Okay.
So the exclamation point. So let's say you want to be reminded of it tomorrow. Put exclamation point tomorrow, or exclamation point the date and time, and it reads most formats. If you have specific notebooks, put the @ symbol and then write the notebook name. And to make it easy, what I do, because I have like 3 general notebooks that I forward most of my stuff to, and I abbreviate them. So if it's one that's for ADHD Rewired, my podcast, that would be a pain in the butt to write ADHD Rewired over and over again. So it's AR. So it's @AR.
Right.
Okay. And then the hashtag is, it's the way to think about tagging is it's a really ADHD friendly way of filing. So when you're not really sure of where to put that piece of information, think about all the possible places it could go, and then you can retrieve it. It's kind of like having one piece of paper, a digital piece of paper, in 10 different places.
I love that. Thank you for explaining that to me, because I knew there was a way that you could do stuff in the subject line. But that's pretty helpful.
And I do have in my email newsletter, in my autoresponder, I do have one of the newsletters explains this whole process with pictures and everything. And so you can get that just going to my website, ADHDrewired.com. How do you use Evernote?
It sounds like we use it very similarly. The advice that I got via video also is to limit the number of notebooks and really let the tags drive it. And once you do it that way, once you let the tags drive it, everything becomes so much more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an inbox and a filing cabinet. And then if I'm sharing notebooks with clients, then I have individual notebooks for that.
Mm-hmm.
But basically everything goes into the inbox, all the articles and stuff like that. And when I have time, I'll sit there and file them. But if I do the subject line thing, I can cut that step out. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, and I think a huge piece of managing ADHD is developing systems. That's really what it's about, is how do we develop systems to sort of take shortcuts, but they're kind of like smart cuts. It's like, what are the things that we do over and over again that we don't need to be doing over and over again? One of my favorites is the use of the canned response. And I save a lot of my canned responses in Evernote. So I'll give you an example. So in the ADHD Rewired Facebook community, when you request to become a member, and I screen everybody, and I'm on the fence of whether or not I should keep doing this because I have a wait list that's the backlog is piling up. But this is how right now I'm maintaining it as a high quality group and kind of free from spam. So if you have requested to get into the group and you're like, what's going on with that? Check your other inbox because sometimes my responses get sent to spam. So I have in my Evernote a canned response. Yes, I'm telling you it's a canned response. It's basically thanking you for your interest and asking just to find out a little bit about you. So this way I can actually learn a little bit about you because I do read those. And I don't have to rewrite and rethink that welcome message over and over again. And then once you respond, I have like 3 different alternative canned responses that tend to fit the response that you just provided. So it's not that like I haven't thought of this. It's just I don't need to think about it every single time I'm in the situation. So that's a great shortcut that I use. And there's even programs that can automate that even faster. So that's one of the things that I use. So go ahead.
Well, you bring up a great point about preserving that decision-making power, because that is one thing that it is not renewable during the day for us. And so the more decisions I can automate, like for instance, a big one, and Carrie helped me with this, is the first thing I do when I get out of bed in the morning, no matter what time it is I get up and I go out and do my walk run. It's just non-negotiable. I don't have to think about it. I don't care how I feel. That's just the rule. Get out of bed, put stuff on, put shoes on, slam a cup of coffee with some cream, some iced coffee with some cream, take my pill, out the door.
Great. And I think one of the advantages of doing that is that you get that physical activity which wakes your brain up, and you do it before your brain has a chance to convince yourself that you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So let me see. I'm taking a look at my notes to see where we're going from here. Let's see. It's also great. I recently got some hired help who will probably edit this part of the podcast out, or I'm just going, where am I going next? Why don't we do this? Helena, I'm going to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, Audible. And when we come back, if you have a recommendation for a favorite book, we'd love to hear it. So we will be right back in just a moment. ADHD Rewired community. I do know you like audio because you're listening to this, unless you were given no other choice, and then I'm sorry. So, we are often driven to distraction, just like this promo for Audible, our sponsor. But I really think that Audible is a great fit for ADHD Rewired because of how much great content is out there and for the way that you are consuming this content. Right when I finish this promo, you're going to hear Helena talk about Driven to Distraction, which is a book that many people have recommended on this podcast. So if you have not taken advantage of Audible's special deal, and that is a free audiobook download and a free 30-day free trial, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and take advantage of that by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free audiobook download. And we are back. So, Helena, I was wondering if you have any recommendations for any good books or anything that you're kind of excited about that you read.
I think that based on the topic and this podcast, if you have any inkling, if you have said, oh, I'm really ADHD and as kind of a joke, read Driven to Distraction.
I think that has been the most recommended book on this podcast. And on Audible, one of the things that there's 2 versions of it. There is the called the ADHD friendly version, also known as the abridged version, and that is actually read by Ned Hallowell. And then there's the long form version, which has all the content. I personally don't think that the reader, it's a good reader, but it doesn't match Ned's tone, I think. So that's just my personal opinion. But you can go, again, check that out and get your free audiobook download at ADHD at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. I want to hear a little bit more about how you help with writing, and I also want to find out a little bit more. You have this whole analogy that has to do with flight. So where should we begin? Do you want to go on the flight path or on the writing path?
Let's go on the flight path because that'll lead us to the writing path.
Okay.
I have an analogy. Well, one of the things that is a big issue for a lot of people with ADHD is time blindness. And a lot of times, or most of the time, time blindness is described where people are missing appointments and forgetting about stuff that in the short term, it's the working memory that breaks down. But, I guess I have enough structures in place that that hasn't been a huge issue for me. How time blindness shows up for me is that I can't conceive of a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. To me, my life is 16 hours at a time. It's when I wake up and when I go to bed. And so the problem with that is if you're pursuing anything that takes a goal that takes any amount of time, like a college degree that took me 10 years.
But you finished.
I did finally. Hooray.
Yes.
Happiest day of my dad's life. Yay. Mine too. And thank you to the dean of the art school at Wayne State University in Detroit, who converted my 260 credits into a BA in art. I'll be forever grateful. But the long-term time blindness I describe in this way, and to understand why I describe it this way, you need to know that for a time my office was in a small regional airport in Southwest Ohio. And so I learned a lot about aviation just by being around. And what you need to know about aviation is that most people who fly the small planes fly something that is called visual flight rules, which means that you have to see where you're going to be able to fly. When you get into the corporate jets and whatnot, and the jets that you fly, the 747s and whatnot, those guys are flying instrument flight rules, IFR. And that means that they are looking at their instruments and letting their instruments tell them what's going on outside. And what I discovered is that if I try to fly VFR in my life, I'm lost. I never get to my destination, or it takes me 10 years.
I often use the expression of going on autopilot, that we can't do that.
No. I mean, there has to be some plan in place, some flight plan, and then you have to trust what I call your instruments. In other words, if your instruments are saying that you're at the right altitude and going the right speed, then you keep going. You don't just kind of randomly decide that you're going to go a different place. And that has helped me so much, just to know that it's okay to trust my plan, that I don't have to respond to every impulse or every shiny thing that comes my way, even if it has that, like, the sparkly feeling where you feel like, oh my goodness, this is kismet. I should really go down this road.
Yes. What's that?
Ooh, the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. But, if to make those possibilities into anything, there has to be a sustained effort. And
so I'm wondering, in your instruments on your navigation system, do you have a pause button? Because I find the power of the pause is huge. Being able to instead of just turning down that course, taking that new flight, saying, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing now? Is this, what are the options if I do want to go there, or should I put this on my next flight plan?
Well, that's the thing. I'll check my flight plan, and I'll is this on the way? How much is this going to cost me to take this diversion in terms of time, effort, and delaying my arrival at the goal I want? So, it, while I've got the plane landed and I'm refueling, right? I'm weighing all that against the master plan. And it's not to say that this is all locked in, but at least it gives me a way to say no to myself, because I think that's the hardest thing when you have ADHD, is that everything's a great idea and has so much promise and could be amazing. And the problem is that, yeah, that's all true, but there has to be this focused effort that pushes it all forward.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to capture those amazing ideas and have a process, during your planning processes to look at those amazing ideas, because some of those ideas will truly be amazing ideas. And some of those ideas, you're going to look at that and say, I don't know what I was thinking. This is garbage. And you'll toss it away. And some of those ideas are amazing, but you also have these other things that you're working on. And so if it keeps coming up, then that's something that you're going to maybe then put on a definite flight plan for the future. I love that analogy. It's great. I think it takes that my analogy of can't go on autopilot kind of one step further. And I like analogies. I think we can all relate to them, because it takes the anything we can make into a story. I think it becomes more relatable.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think the other thing with that is that I had to accept for myself is I'm going to miss some opportunities based on focusing on the goal that I want. And that was the hardest thing for me, is to know that I was going to miss stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to miss stuff, and I was going to be wrong, and there were going to be opportunities that were going to go by me. And I just made that okay.
And it is. And I think one of the most, I think, valuable, but I think hard things for anyone, not just ADHD, but I think for all of us to really say is how much power the word no has.
Man.
Because when you say no to something else, you're saying yes to yourself. And I think it's an important shift to really look at, okay, so this new thing comes up, this great idea. But if you have these plans, if you have these other things that you're trying to do, and you say no, you saying no is saying yes to what you've already planned. And so I think that's a very empowering thing. And it's hard because we get excited by things very easily, which is both a good and bad thing.
Well, there's this creative energy. I mean, that's part of the gift of ADHD too, is the ability to, think out of the box. It's kind of a tired phrase, and that associative thinking too, the ability to see the relationships between things that other people don't see.
Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
I just had an idea.
Okay.
So, this kind of comes from an improv game that I recently learned, because I love the associative thinking games. So I'm going to try to, on the spot, come up with 3 completely random things, and can you put them together in a short story?
I'll try. Yeah. Go for it.
We're going to see where this goes.
Okay.
Walrus, telephone, helicopter.
Okay. There's a big walrus on a beach, and he's sunning himself. Life is good. And suddenly, there's a giant helicopter over his head, and he has no idea what's going on. It's scaring all of his friends away. And then, dropping from the helicopter is a smartphone. And attached to the smartphone is a person in a wetsuit. And he has no idea what's happening. He just knows his world will never be the same. And the person spins around and puts the smartphone to his face and takes a selfie with the walrus and goes back up into the helicopter, posts it on Facebook. And that's the end.
Not bad for completely on the spot. That was awesome. So, okay, Let's transition into. Thanks for playing. That was fun.
Oh man! All right, I gotta get that image out of my mind now with the walrus and the guy in the helicopter. Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
We're gonna get like complaints, from like some animal rights group, saying you can't be dropping your smartphone on walruses on the beach and helicopters scare them. Don't do that.
Oh, goodness.
I must be excited that they're listening. Okay, yeah, exactly. So. Coming back to where we were. I don't know where we were. Let's go into talking about what you do as a writing coach.
So my original business, and it still exists, obviously, is working. I'm a communications consultant and business storyteller who has been working with creative firms and design firms for about the last 7 years. And so working with creative people can be a little like herding cats because we're all very...
Wait, herding or hurting?
Herding.
I was like, wait, why are you talking about herding cats?
No cats were hurt in the making of this podcast.
Or walruses.
And what ended up happening is that, I think what happens is you begin attracting sort of who you are. And so I ended up with a lot of clients who were displaying a lot of ADHD traits. And I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. So I, of course, did not try to diagnose them, but I started to use some of the structures, introduce some of the structures into the writing process and combining them with some of the stuff that I learned as a PR professional, because that was part of what I did in my early business. And it just worked. So can
you share some examples?
Yeah. The most powerful thing that I've seen work is a PR pitching protocol that breaks business emails down to 3 elements and 3 elements only. And I can't take credit for this. This was taught to me by a woman named Margot Matisse, prtrainer.com. She's awesome. But the 3 pieces are: what is it? Why do I care? And what do you want me to do?
What is it? Why do I care? And what do you want me to do?
What do you want me to do? So thank you so much for the meeting that we had yesterday about this new product. This new product will really help you move forward in your business. Please contact me, or I'll contact you in the next day or two to schedule another meeting. And, please let me know if you have any questions. So there's the introduction of, so you give the person the orientation to what the email is about, 2 sentences max, why they should care, the backstory a little bit, and then the call to action, what you want them to do. And what I found with people with ADHD is it gives them permission to talk about one thing.
That's good.
Because going back to this notion of the 9+ things that are fighting to get out of our heads, the way I start this whole process is I get people to send me some sample emails. And what I always see is, 3 pounds of bologna stuffed into a 1-pound bag,
With someone who doesn't even like bologna to begin with.
Right. Exactly.
That's great.
Exactly. Right. So just teaching that little formula allows people to be very, very focused. And it's funny too, because when they, we'll work together so that they can see what that looks like in, through the lens of their own work. And then they always tell me how annoyed they become at other people's emails that are rambling and inactionable.
Yes, it's true. And one of the things that I actually ask some of my clients to do who, tend to send me the 3 pounds of bologna, is I tell them I'd rather have 5 separate emails
Yes.
than
Oh,
have
thank you.
one with
Yes.
all of these questions. Because the way I am, if I don't know the answer to one of their 5 questions, they're not going to get a response. And
Thank
then I
you.
feel bad about it. And it's like, if you break it up, so I'd rather have those 5 emails with a clear subject line, with that clear, call to action. And the best way, to get a quick response is ask the question and then say, here, I'm thinking of doing it this way, or this way. What do you think? And then
Hmm.
I'll say, I like B. And that's,
Yes.
so it's, if you want a quicker response, because email, is not, it becomes this huge time suck, not a time saver, especially if we're doing things like that. So I think that's really good advice to make it very concise. And I don't remember where I heard this, but that most people will decide whether or not they're going to respond to an email or if it's junk within 7 seconds. Have you heard something
Yes.
like that?
Yes, yes. Well, there's statistics that say that people are getting an average of 100 emails a day.
I'd be happy if I
Business.
only got 100 emails a day.
Seriously. So, and tell me if this is true for you. So what I tell people is that, I have my people that I know when their name shows up in my inbox, I know that they're going to be fast to respond to. So they go to the front of the line. And the people that I know, if I open an email and it's just like hits me in the face, like a wall of text hits me in the face,
Mm-hmm.
that goes to the bottom of the pile.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can become known as a person who writes extremely actionable emails, the wheel will spin much faster for you.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, and again, one of the many things that I think about but haven't taken action on yet, is going from a written text form of email to an audio file email. Just because I can communicate a lot more clearly and a lot more, just I think efficiently by talking. So what do you think if you got someone that sent you an mp3 file in an email?
I'm not always in a place where I can listen.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is another thing that I work with too, is that the verbal communication is not the same as written communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure if that would be more effective or not, because it would require people to actually stop and listen,
Mm-hmm.
To what you have to say. So because what happens is that most people don't read individual words. They're actually people are reading so much now that they've actually sort of fallen into this Evelyn Wood speed reading thing where they're basically grabbing blocks of text with their eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and they're scanning the first line and then kind of scanning for meaningful terms within the paragraph, and then they kind of read the bottom to see what's happening. So the way that people are reading is changing too. The 7-second thing is totally true, though. You do not have much time at all for people to decide whether or not they want to deal with it.
So, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. As you were saying, it gives us permission to just focus on that one thing. But the bad part of it is that for some of us, it could be challenged to be concise, to capture what the main point is that we're trying to say. Because sometimes we don't even know what the main point is.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so now you shared some tips regarding the kind of business emails. The what is it, why do I care, and what do you want me to do? Do you have any other suggestions regarding writing and some of the ways that maybe you help your clients as a writing coach?
I want to speak for a moment about most people's impulses when they are running into writing problems.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing most people want to do is go take a class. And I'm all about the classes. I'm obviously a professional student, having
did it for
been
10 years.
10 years. But the problem is by the time you're an adult, there's two things happening. Is that most of your problems are foundational, and they're issues in your thinking patterns and the way that you process information. They don't really have as much to do with your ability to write. And so that's why I really go after the structures. Is what is it? Why do I care? And what do you want me to do? Because if people just organize, this works for reports. This works for anything, this pattern. If you just organize the information in this these three buckets, you will become much more understandable, and people will comprehend what you're saying much more quickly, and they'll also become more forgiving of your typos and whatnot. So the class thing doesn't address the foundational thinking patterns. Coaching does. They can work with you, kind of see how your mind works and address things individually.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is that for ADHD writers, often, especially if you're doing emails at the end of the day, your executive function is shot. And so what happens is that it starts making you more efficient. It starts making decisions for you in terms of what's important and not important. And part of that is you will not see the typos. You won't see them. There's nothing wrong with, like, you're not stupid or bad or illiterate. It's just your executive function trying to help you out. And so if you have a really important email to write it in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Put it down, save it as a draft, go get a cup of coffee, come back and proofread it. They're two separate things. They use two separate parts of the brain. So if you've got something really important that can't be wrong, write it, get a cup of coffee, come back and proofread.
Any important emails that I send out, and every time I don't listen to my own rule, I end up regretting it. I have my wife do the proofread.
Oh, good for you.
And it's amazing the stuff that she catches that I'm like, how did I not see that?
You did.
Without fail.
Yeah.
And, let's say it's late at night and I want to just get something out, and also I'll think that I'm going through it with like a fine-tooth comb and looking through everything. And then, I'll wake up in the morning and my wife's already up, and she looked at the email that I send out, and she will give me that loving smile and say, this word is spelled, this way. I'm like, oh no. Mm-hmm. Or my favorite mistake that I've made at least 3 times is I'll get the right date on the wrong day, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because your brain is like, oh, that's good. Yeah, whatever. Not core information. Let's move on.
And for a really, really long time, I've been spelling the word webinar, AIR, which I had WEB. Yes. So
inverting them.
Apparently, it's not AIR, it's AR, which Grant from our ADHD Rewired community, who does a lot of social media stuff, sent me a very nice message. Just your video is decent, except that you spelled the webinar wrong. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been spelling it that way for so long, and I always thought that it looked funny, but I was like, oh, maybe, and spell check always said it was wrong. I'm like, maybe it's just one of those words that spell check hasn't updated yet. So I, palm goes through forehead, and I laugh and I say, oh well.
Well, but that's important too, what you just said, because the self-compassion, right? Like, make friends with your brain.
Yes. It's funny. I want to start this movement of open source editing, and it's not like the computer type of open source editing. It's just where people who love to catch people's typos.
Oh man.
Please just fix mine. I don't care. Great. Thank you. Thank you for doing me a service. Your brain wants to see the typos. My brain has the gift of making them. So that's my version of open source editing.
That'd be awesome.
Because, it's like, I find it funny on a lot, especially on Facebook, how people will jump down people's throats for the typos they make. It's like, you know what I meant. It's like, I'm not, this isn't a thread that's going to go to the New York Times bestseller list. I'm just communicating an idea. So that's just my kind of thing. It's like, yes, I'm going to make typos.
Yes.
And I am human. Okay. So, let me ask you. Let's see. Where am I going next? I'm looking at my flight plan. I wanted to ask you. So you said that now you're building your writing business, and I wanted to ask you. So as a coach who has ADHD, who's working with people with ADHD, from your personal level, what is something that you are currently, what are you struggling with right now?
Well, as a writer, I have a really hard time deciding when it's done. I'm a compulsive editor, rewriter. And, and so the it takes blog posts, bylined articles, anything I want to write for myself. I want it to be precise, and I wanted to say what I wanted to say. The problem is that what I wanted to say when I started the article isn't always the same thing that I end up wanting to say at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting better about doing the outlining part first and deciding what the peg is first, what the point is I want to make first, so that I can just write to that point rather than making the whole thing a 7-hour exploratory exercise where I don't end up with a product at the end.
Okay. So I think that perfectionism is a big area for lots of people, including myself, and I've made a lot of progress in this area, but I still also struggle with it. And I think there's a lot of underlying reasons that there's a lot of perfectionism with people with ADHD. And one of the things that has really helped me is part of it is mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at the product that we've created, and let's say it's at an 85% quality, and we've put in, say, 6 hours of work to it. To get it to 90% might take 15 hours of work on it. Now, 75% is usually good enough. So if we're going to judge it ourselves, we're not going to be a fair critic because the creator is always the harshest critic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, it's okay. What is somebody else expecting? Not what am I expecting? Because that's not a fair threshold. Because it's almost an impossible one to get to. So for me, it's looking at, okay, what is the time difference in the return on my investment on time, and is the 80% gonna really help people? And
Mm-hmm.
often it's
right.
yes. Are people going to perceive it as high value? Often the answer is yes. Is me spending 10 hours getting the right kind of curvy lines in that font to line up just precisely in a way that nobody else would really know the difference either way? Is that going to really move me forward or provide any additional value to anybody else? No. So it's understanding that yes, we're going to be uncomfortable with our own work, but we don't have to listen to that. Just know what it is. Don't judge it, and just say, okay, so that's my own critic, and I'm just going to notice that. But then, if you have a group of people that maybe 1 or 2, 3 people that you can say, hey, will you take a look at this, and will you tell me if you think this is done?
Yeah, I think that there's another dimension of that too, though. I mean, that I can do that in other areas of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that sometimes there are areas where you want it to be 100%, where it's a piece of art to you. And that's where I run into issues, is that my perception of writing for myself, because of where I come from, is as artist, which is not what most people are doing in the professional writing world. And so trying to figure out how to approach writing professionally with this 80%, 75% mindset, knowing that it's going to help a lot of people. The more stuff I can get out there is the more people I can help. And not everything has to be,
Helena,
great literature.
As you gave us permission to narrow our focus in our writing, I'm going to give you permission to take that 100% idea and just put it in a drawer somewhere in the way back of the drawer, and give yourself permission to not have 100% be your goal. It's something that I talk a lot about with my coaching group, is that, if we get that 100%, that piece that we're just amazed, we felt so good about, great, but shoot for that 80%, because that's where we're going to find that flow of success, where we're going to feel we're creating really great work and a good quantity of quality work. It's that progress, not perfection. It's that idea of moving forward. So, I think a lot of us, including myself, have this desire to make this amazing, perfect product. And I have to do a lot of my own self-talk to say, it's good enough, and good enough is great. Often take it the next level. Say good enough is great and perfect sucks. Because perfect, people often don't see perfect because it never gets done.
Yeah,
So
that's very
permission to move your goalpost closer to you.
Well, I think, part of it for me is point of view too. Like if I can get this, what I'm doing professionally, for helping people into this quantity at 80% is going to help more people than quality at, like less frequency at 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a place for 100%, but it's not here. And that's the thing. That's the shift in mindset that I have to make, is that it's really not. It's not achieving my mission.
Mm-hmm. And it's also in many, many ways, it's also very unrealistic. I want you to do me a favor for a moment. Do you have a pen and paper in front of you?
I do.
Draw like a box.
Okay.
Okay. On one side of the box is start. On the other side of the box is end. Almost look at it like a field where you have goals.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's say you're at this start and you want to get halfway closer to your goal. So draw a line right in the middle of the box.
Okay.
Okay. Now from that middle point, go from the middle point to the goal and draw a line halfway between there.
Okay.
Now the line that you just drew, draw a line in the middle point halfway from there to the goal.
Okay.
And then from that line halfway to the goal.
Okay.
And repeat. And repeat. And repeat. And what you're going to find is, no matter how fine-tipped your pen is, you'll never achieve your goal. So we always want to get closer to our goal, but trying to achieve perfection is not a realistic venture.
Oh, that's a great exercise.
There's a term for that. There's a phrase for it, but I forget these things. So, but
this is great. People should do this. This is great.
So it's that idea of where am I now? What's one step towards improvement? And that's what your done should look like.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it was really interesting. I when I was giving you some of that feedback about the permission to not do 100%, I recognized last week I was in this mastermind group with Peter Shankman, and he was telling me something, and I felt my defenses like kicking up the high gears. And the look on your face, I think, was very similar to probably what I was putting off as well, was this kind of dichotomy of, you're probably right, but I'm not ready to hear this yet.
Well, you think about why we're into the perfectionism. When you get the messaging that, at least that I got growing up, right? If I'm just doing more, if I just do enough, and so that takes some rewiring. It takes some rewiring to take that control back.
And hence the name ADHD Rewired.
Yes.
Okay, well, we are just about at the hour mark, so I think it's time to close up shop here. Before we do, I like to do what I call the random question round, which is the part of the show that has nothing to do with ADHD, which then paradoxically has everything to do with ADHD. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First question, give me 3 book titles that you would never write.
How to Be Just Like Everyone Else. Milk Toast and Soggy Bran. Boring Things That Don't Excite Anyone.
Okay. Great. And that will not be on Audible. Okay. Next question is, I lost my list of random questions, so now I'm having to kind of go on the fly and do this, but that's okay because I do that fairly well. My next random question is, If you could have a dinner guest over, any dinner guest over, who would it be? So first tell me that.
Oh, Vinton Cerf.
And who is that?
He's often called the father of the internet, but he developed TCP/IP protocol
Okay.
when he was with MCI.
Okay. And now you made his favorite meal and he burnt it. What do you do?
What do I do? I tell him, come on, and we're going to go to a nice fancy restaurant in Princeton and continue our conversation about the future of technology.
Awesome. I thought Al Gore invented the internet.
Yeah, well.
Okay.
Sigh.
Let's see. One last question. And I think this is a one I've asked a couple of different guests, and I like this question. It's, if you can invent something, what would it be?
I could invent something. I would invent the Compassionator, which would be a pair of glasses people could put on to understand what other people are going through.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And there's a huge market for that as well. Wow. Oh, I like that. I wasn't expecting that, and that's why I love talking to people with ADHD, because they throw these awesome creative curveballs. So, Helena Boucher.
Oh, wait. Wait a minute.
Can you tell people how they could reach you?
Well, I have a website called ADHDwords.com. ADHDwords.com. And I would love it if you would sign up for email, because I'm going to be putting up content that is writing specific there. I'm going to be running some short classes. And, I really like the opportunity to help people out in this area because we have so much creativity. Let's get it out.
Exactly. It's awesome. So thank you, Helena, so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I do look forward to talking with you more after this recording. So thank you so much. And I want to invite you to the ADHD Rewired Facebook community, where you will find your tribe.
Very good. I will be there.
Great, Helena. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, ADHD Rewired community, as always, I want to thank you for listening. And this week, I want to thank a few people for leaving 5-star reviews in iTunes. The first review I want to read is from Addie MVR, who says, "Amazing. My heart warms up when I see such a powerful message being delivered through this podcast. It's a must listen." Thanks, Addie MVR. And Amy Schuber says, "Information is powerful. ADHD Rewired is so informative. I appreciate and love to tune in to expand my horizons. Thanks, Eric." Bonnie Cribs says, "Thank you. This show has helped me better understand what's going on in the world around me. What amazing information you have in here. So much appreciation for this content." And the last one that I want to read is written by Grateful Deadhead, who says, "Words can't begin to describe, but let's throw some out anyhow. Eric Tivers is the epitome of an ADHD expert, both professionally and personally affected by it himself. This guy gets it, even when no one else does. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Please keep it going. P.S. Still waiting for the mind-reading device." And I think that was in reference to a recent episode. Well, thank you, and you're welcome for producing this, because this is something that is something that I do out of the passion for what I am doing here. So thank you guys, everyone, for those reviews. And remember, this really is one of the best ways that people can learn about ADHD. So I do appreciate those reviews. Do you have a story to share about your ADHD? If you want to be a guest on ADHD Rewired, go to ADHDrewired.com and click the yellow Be a Guest bar. Are you looking for a coach? Schedule a free 20-minute consultation with me. It's super easy. Go to erictivers.com/coaching. You can also click the blue bar to request an appointment. Or if your podcast app supports one of those clickable links in the show notes, then just click that link and you'll go right to my scheduling page. You know this little thing called Facebook? Well, we're on there and we have a growing community. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, but join our community by requesting to join, and I will try to get back with you in about a week. That's about what it's been as of lately. And don't forget to check your other inbox, because sometimes my responses to your requests tend to go there. If you have not yet registered for the 2014 CHAD International Conference on ADHD, do it now. Do it now. Do it now. If you want one more reminder, do it now. The International Conference on ADHD, the CHAD Conference, it's November 13th through the 15th. The world's top experts on ADHD will be there, including mine. There are over 70 sessions. Mine is called Productivity 2.0, Getting Things Done with ADHD, Strategies, Apps, and Other Tools to GTD with ADHD. And there's no affiliation with David Allen's GTD. If you have a comment, feedback, or suggestion on what would make this podcast even better, please contact me through my website, ADHDrewired.com. Do you have ideas for show topics, or maybe you would like to be a guest on the show? Just go to ADHD Rewired and use the contact form on that page. Okay, and lastly, last week I shared with you that I had a goal that I was going to be working on, and that was to get home earlier. So last week my goal was to get home once, just once, to put my son to bed. And this week the goal is twice. So today is Tuesday, October 14th, and I am looking at my goal sheet that I filled out, and yes, I have Scooby-Doo on the top of it, because star charts are not just for kids. And last week, I got home 4 times, and I was able to put my son to bed 4 times last night, give him a bath, and spend time with my wife, and it was wonderful. So today is Tuesday. Yesterday, on Monday, I was able to get home on time and got to spend some time with him then. I'm not going to be able to do it today because I have too much stuff to do this evening, but I am hoping to get home by 9 o'clock. So that's my update on this goal, and I'm going to keep you guys updated on this because this is an area of my life that I am really working on, and I've had enough of thinking about it. Now I am taking action. And one of the best things you can do to take action on something that's hard is hold yourself accountable, put yourself out there, or work with a coach. To the members of the ADHD Rewired online coaching group, we are about halfway through our 12-week group. And I just think it's amazing to hear how many aha moments I've heard people have this week. And I believe the theme of the aha moments that I've been hearing this week is how people are really getting the idea that we can't go through life on autopilot, which really ties in beautifully to today's episode. So this may end up being the longest episode in the history of ADHD Rewired. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time.